issue.
Councillors, I declare the meeting open and remind you that the meeting is webcast. And you should refrain from making any defamatory statements. A reminder that no photos are permitted and no recording of the meeting. It's being webcast, so you can go there and follow it if you inattentive tonight. Acknowledgement of country. I acknowledge that we're meeting on the ancestral land of the Ngunnawal people. I recognise the Ngunnawal as the traditional custodians and pay my respects to the elders of the community and their descendants. I'd also like to acknowledge that today is National Sorry Day. You all stand for the prayer, please. Let us be still and remember the presence of God. As we commence our meeting, let us together pray for guidance and help. Almighty God, we ask your blessing upon this council. Direct and prosper our deliberations to the true welfare of Australia and the people of Yass Valley. Amen. Thank you. Okay, item 3, any declaration of interest or apology. Do we have any apologies? We do have one apology from Councillor Turner. Someone like to move the acceptance? Councillor Jones, Councillor Reid. Declaration of pecuniary interests or any special disclosures? Confirmation of minutes of the last meeting. Been circulated. Any questions or any comments? Moving the adoption. Do we have a seconder? Seconded Councillor Abbey. Any questions? Put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? Declare it carried. The mayoral minute. I'll move that it be adopted. It's pretty straightforward. Any questions? Put the motion. All those in favour?
Sorry.
Those against? Declare it carried.
Can I make a comment?
Yes, you can.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, I'm a bit slow there.
No, well, that happens to all of us. Okay.
As we get on.
I'm trying to set a good example.
Trying to move fast. Look, Mr. Mayor, I want to congratulate you on putting out support to the Australian Local Government Association Don't Leave Local Communities Behind as we've gone through a federal election. I wish to point out that they stress the importance of the circular economy, a term that will become increasingly familiar as we move ahead. And they've mentioned that they want the governments to support innovative projects in this particular area up to $100 million. And they've also talked about the need for national bin harmonisation in order to maximise opportunities for reuse. Also, they have mentioned that they want to get up a climate response partnership fund of $200 million to enable planning and preparation to minimise the impacts of climate change in local communities and enable the councils to achieve climate neutrality as soon as possible. I'd just like to mention that that's our point 5 in our advocacy list, the same thing. And so I think it's good that we've recognised that. And I think we must continue to push with our state and re-elected federal parliamentarian to come to terms with some of those issues that we're advocating at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cameron. Any further comments? I think I put that motion. Yes, moved, carried. Okay, 6.1.
Through Mr. Mayor, the amended motion, which is now a motion, I'd like to put forward on the conditional development consent that be issued for the quarry rehab of the 38,150 cubic metres. And I'd also like to note the new VPA, the voluntary planning agreement, of the heavy haulage contribution of $47,000 $536.81, which is in line with our new heavy haulage policy, which I would decide to.
Before we go any further, Councillor Jones, we better wait and see whether we've got a seconder to the motion.
Oh, there's a point 3, which is the crowling, the triangular.
Do we have a seconder? Councillor Burgess. Thank you, Councillor Jones. Any further comments?
Just while I'm on my feet, I'd just like to say I appreciate the applicants coming to the table with the new BPA, which is in the spirit of where we want to see our heavy haulage contribution going in terms of being able to rehabilitate and maintain that road after the work is done. I think you'd all like to see the truck movements occur in a measured way, but that's not how these things often come about. The quarry has to accept the material when it's ready to be accepted. That's just how business is done. We can't put a cap on the movements of that road. It's a public road, anyone can use it, and all the information coming from our staff is that this road is up to the challenge of the 22% increase. And so I think given that this is some environmental works which will bring this quarry back to its natural state and close it off as a use for a quarry, it's what we would expect of ourselves if we've got a quarry or if we've got a waste site that needs to be finalised. We would expect to do the works and be able to finish it off. And I think every landholder has a right to return it to the use that the natural state that it was. I understand that they're going to make a business arrangement out of this, as one would expect, and I think the DPA agreement brings in line what the community expects to some degree in terms of being able to rehabilitate roads.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Any speakers against the motion? Councillor Cameron.
I'll have a go. Yeah, I'd like to oppose it, this particular DA. Look, the DA reads really well initially in that it appears to have an environmental focus in the remediation of the quarry with putting in 3,000 trees. However, when you go out to the actual site, which we did, the quarry itself is very small. And I think when you think of a quarry, you think of something rather large and imposing. And this looks more like a community swimming pool. And when asked about the depth of that swimming pool, I think it was described as only a few metres. So I basically think that the amount of fill that's being requested for this particular remediation is quite excessive. I noticed that it says that they want to return the area to a gently undulating landscape, but the amount of fill could produce a replica of Mount Kosciuszko as far as I'm concerned. It's quite excessive. A more cynical person than myself would say that it looks like a private venture to maximise profits from importing fill from the ACT, with the Yass Valley community to pick up the tab if there's any problems. And that sort of worries me greatly, because there could easily be problems with this particular development. Who's looking after the trees after they're planted? Are they being watered, or is it just going to be left to good luck and natural rainfall, which we don't seem to have at the moment? It's quite unnatural. In an earlier forum, one of the critics of the DA suggested that the person putting this DA forward probably would make about $900,000, which surprised me. And it also surprised me that nobody argued back about that figure being too large. So it wasn't commented upon. But one councillor here has done some sums and believes it could be 4 to 5 times larger than that. So we could be handing over a profit of anywhere between $1 million and $4.5 million, depending on what they charge for the fill to be submitted to the mountain. I oppose it on 3 grounds. I think the amount of heavy traffic is unreasonable in terms of local amenity, and I think a number of locals have pointed that out. I think the impact on the environment is excessive in the terms of the amount of truck movement is unbelievable, and what that's doing to the carbon sort of input into the atmosphere, who knows. And finally, the impact on the road surface of Murray Boatman Road. Councillor Jones has said that the staff think that there won't be any hassle. I'm just not sure about that. I think the voluntary contribution, I agree, is a good thing, and the fact that it's been up, but the figures just don't add up for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cameron. Any further speakers for the motion?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I just want to speak in support of this. This for me was a really tough decision, and I know I've asked a lot of questions and done a lot of research to get to this point. And I think the bigger thing for me, I feel like the applicant has done everything they've asked. I've read a lot of the complaints and the community concerns that have come through, and I feel a lot of that has been answered and looked at in the past, 12 months, 18 months that this has been going through. I think for me, my issue is perhaps more with the heavy haulage thing that we have, the umbrella that sits on top of this. So it's not actually about this DA in particular, it's about our policies that we have and the rates that we charge. And I know for me, I have concerns that they seem to be fixed rates, where a lot of other stuff sort of goes up every year more on a CPI basis. So I think that's where my concerns have come in. However, this DA is done through a permissible plan. They've ticked all the boxes, they've answered all the questions. So I'm speaking in support of this to go through today. But I just wanted to express those concerns, and also I guess the concerns of the community about the truck movements and things. I've certainly listened and looked into that, and I like that it's all been pulled back, and it will take a lot longer to do this. However, the truck movements are a lot less than what was originally expressed. So,
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Root.
Yes, thank you. Whilst I agree with a lot of what Councillor Cameron said, in fact I agree with all of it, I also understand the constraints that we've got at Council, and Council Cameron said that the 38,000 square metres was excessive. I have absolutely no idea whether it's excessive or realistic or what, and I was wondering whether the Director of Planning and or Director of Infrastructure have any comments to make on, is this realistic for that particular area? Have we any control over whether we should ask the developer to cut back on the amount of fill that's being requested? Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for your question, Councillor Reid. In relation to the amount of fill, that's what they've asked for in the development application. Having read through the information that's been submitted, it's been supported by the consultant who is undertaking the environmental side of it. So I'm comfortable with the amount of fill, like that's what we're being asked to consider. We're not being asked to consider anything else. So the amount of fill that comes into the property will be monitored through the fill records and the surveys that they would be required to be submitted over time.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, no further questions? No further discussion? Bear to vote? I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? Councillor Abbey and Councillor Cameron. Thank you, councillors. Item 6.2. Variations to development standards. There is a recommendation. Councillor Jones, Councillor Hoffman. Any questions?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, straightforward, through to the keeper.
I'll go with that.
Who is the king?
I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? Clear it carried. Naming a rail over a bridge on Lachlan Valley. Okay, there is a recommendation. Councillor Abbey?
Through you, Mayor, I'm not sure, is the GM online or?
I'm here.
Okay. So further to the briefing on Tuesday night, I got back to the gentleman that proposed this naming of the Wamford Bridge in the first instance. He had a couple of points of view. The first one was, is there a way that we can tweak the name? For example, he suggested as a family was wiped out, could it be called, say, the Wamsley Family Bridge? Or if the Wamsley Bridge covers the Yass River, could this one be called the Wamsley Overbridge to differentiate it? That was what he was wondering. I didn't leave him with any confidence in that, but I don't have enough experience dealing with Transport for New South Wales Policy 266, naming of bridges and roads, 2015. Maybe some verbal advice could be sought. And should all that go pear-shaped, then he was quite comfortable there to be a plaque, maybe on a can, or something to be erected in memory of this tragedy of 1963, where 2 generations of family were wiped out.
Thanks very much for that feedback.
We might refer to the Director of Infrastructure and Assets.
So through you, Mr Mayor, so at this point in time, we haven't had any feedback from the naming board, the geographical naming board, as to whether or not that would be acceptable. Obviously, we discovered this incident on Tuesday night where we discovered there was another bridge called the Walmsley Bridge.
Yes.
So
Should we
thanks,
Should we defer?
thanks
Should we
to Councillor
defer?
Burgess. I think we should defer this for now until we can get feedback from the geographical naming board as to what would be acceptable.
Councillor Abbey, Councillor Burgess, that the matter be deferred for consideration at a future meeting, subject to additional information. Okay, everyone happy with that?
Thanks.
I'll put the motion, all those in favour, those against, declare the motion carried. 6.4, investment and borrowings report. Recommendation, Councillor Reid.
I'll move that it be noted.
Councillor Potham, moved Reid, Potham, seconded Potham. Any discussion, any questions? I'll put the motion, all those in favour, those against, declare the motion carried. Unanimous. Third quarter budget review statement. There is a recommendation. Councillor Reid, moved.
I'll move the recommendation as a motion.
Thank you, Councillor Reid, seconded Councillor Potham. Any questions, any comments? Councillor Cameron?
I have 3 questions through you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor.
The first one, it all relates to the section property management on page 156 of the attachment. So the it mentions the Goodridge, sorry, I'm struggling. Goodridge Centre subdivision. Can we get a bit of explanation about what you mean by a subdivision? I presume that it's not the centre itself being divided up. So what's being divided up?
Second, yeah, through Mr Mayor, so the Goodridge Centre currently sits on a large block of land and has multiple buildings on that block. The idea is to subdivide that land into 2 blocks of land, one with the Goodridge Centre on and one with the sheds and supporting buildings that were on it as well, so that they can be leased separately.
So the subdivision is only breaking it up into 2 parts?
Yes.
Right, that wasn't clear. The other question, another question, 116 Laidlaw Street, and we're spending 72,000 budgeted for the contamination report. Can you give us a bit of detail on that one, please?
So through you, Chair, so 116 and 118 Laidlaw Street was a block of land that council acquired a number of years ago. It has recently been subdivided to have the future access way to Yarra through the middle of it. And so now that we have no further use for that land, we are doing contamination investigations. That was the area where the train used to park to provide fuel to the service stations along Gasoline Alley back in the days when the highway ran through Yass. So as a result, there's a potential for contamination in that area. So we need to do a contamination assessment to determine if there's any contamination remediation that needs to be done before we can make a decision on whether or not to dispose of that land or to use it for some other purpose other than leasing it as a place for parking trucks at this point in time.
So I suppose, so is that going to be an access point for the development.
Yes.
I suppose I'm thinking in my own mind, why are we doing the contamination?
No, so the land has been subdivided. So the section of land that will be the access point
Yeah,
is a separate piece of land. And it has a link across the highway. So 116 and 118 are the two pieces of land either side of that access point.
inside that access point.
Either side of that
Either
access point.
side. All right, so would the intention be that if the contamination report is reasonable to sell it?
So council made a decision that it was a medium priority for disposal in a previous decision.
All right. And final question, I noticed that in the papers, the Soldiers Memorial Hall was unsuccessful in obtaining a grant for the $4.5 million. It was unsuccessful passing the expression of interest phase. Your opinion on why it didn't succeed?
So our advice back is that because the grant was not competitive against the significant number of other grants that were far more focused on cultural and artistic events as opposed to the hall, which is a community hall.
So our focus was slightly off key?
No, because it is a multi-purpose community hall, not a arts and culture centre. There was the grant had something like in the order of 6 times oversubscribed,
Right.
and so our grant was not considered within the group of grants that should go to the next round, which is still, from what we were told, 3 times oversubscribed, because it was not focused on cultural events as much as what those other grant proponents were.
Okay, thank you.
Or sorry, cultural and artistic events.
Cultural and artistic, and we weren't sort of heavily enough into that.
No.
All right. Through you, Mr Mayor, just a quick comment. In February, it was stated that we would have a grants report indicating what competitive grants council has applied for and whether successful or not. It's now 3 months since February. Are we getting a grants report? Thank you.
Through you, Mr Mayor, the staff have responded to councillors regarding that and the information was provided. We are working on a report to come to council. We're attempting to get as much historical information as we can before we put it to council.
Sorry, through you, Mr Mayor. I thought the report was really only going to be looking at the current sort of time between February and May, the 3-month period.
The quarterly.
Yeah, I think there was a suggestion of quarterly.
No, they won't be starting until July, 1st of July, so the new financial year.
Right,
At July, we will have the first report and then it'll be a quarterly report from them.
thank you.
Any further comments?
Just noting that our capital budget is looking at being around 31.2 million. And now that we're in May, just wanted to get my head around actually how much we can get across the line, because it looks like we'll have to carry over 7 million. Now, in the past, we've had carryovers of 1 million, 2 million, I think. This is fairly big, and I just wanted to see if there are any icebergs ahead for us in terms, because I know that sometimes we have to match and have the funds ready, and we're a reasonably small rural council. I just want to understand what the implications are for our next budget, if there's going to be any big things we need to be looking at as we go forward into the new budget.
Through you, Mr Mayor, as we have been advising during our community engagement presentations, we are rolling over approximately $7 million in capital expenditure from projects that haven't been able to be finished. Last financial year, we actually, before I arrived, apparently you rolled over substantially more than $20 million in capital expenditure, and we have made a very good attempt this year to complete as many of those projects as we can. The capital expenditure grants that we have are reserved and rolled over, so there is no risk of, and the co-contributions that you talk about, they are secured in our restricted funds.
That is good news. Thank you. That was what I was just processing. Thank you. Okay.
No further questions? I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? Declare it carried. Item 6.6, committee nominations.
Do we need a motion to?
Need a motion.
Yes, please. Councillor Reid, Councillor Burgess. Any discussion? I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against?
Confidential is what the motion is for the public.
I declare the motion carried. 6.7. Health inquiry outcomes, access to health and hospital services in rural and regional and remote Australia. Any questions, any comments? Extremely comprehensive report.
Through you, Mr Mayor, if I could hand this to Councillor Poppin to move the motion, as I believe she might want to add some steps for us.
Yep, happy to move.
Okay, moved councillor Arthur, seconded councillor Jones. Okay, discussion, you want to speak?
So through you, Mr Mayor, the motion that I've put forward has come about on, we have discussed this at previous council meetings, the state of the healthcare. There just seems to be so many things still coming up for the community out there as far as waiting for ambulances and problems at the hospital, and this obviously has nothing to do with the amazing job that our nurses and doctors and ambulance are doing with the limited resources and staff that they have. And so I just wanted to make it really clear that we were doing everything we could. And I know in the past we have put this forward in the mayoral minutes, and that's been noted, and we've also put forward Councillor Jones onto the committee there to bring back some feedback here. I just feel like while all those things are definitely a big step in the right direction, I feel like we can do more. And I feel like we need to be talking about it, particularly on behalf of the community. And I know that the healthcare isn't necessarily one of our buckets. I just feel like there's more we can do, particularly as far as actions go. I see a lot of stuff going through written. The report, that parliamentary report, is amazing. It really highlights a lot of the problems in the healthcare systems right through New South Wales, and there's a lot of really good key points in there. So just from my point of view, I wanted to put forward a motion that we do get some letters written and get some action taken, and I feel like we owe it to the community to put more pressure on, is basically what this is about. So it is basically about it is more of an action step, and it's just putting some more pressure onto sort of our state members and also going through these other key people that are listed in the motion to hopefully get a bit more action for our hospitals and ambulance staff.
So that's, that you're speaking on the notice of motion.
Yes.
Which you submitted, right?
Through you, Mr Mayor, if we can amend the motion to, if I could just direct Sheree, if that's possible, if you could copy the 2 steps out of 7.2 and paste them into that. I think that's where the magic is.
Yeah.
Okay, so that incorporates it into one motion here.
Yes, just to add to that, Mr Mayor, my motion came about the same time that parliamentary report came through, so I wasn't aware this was going to be at the council meeting. I just wanted more action. So it was just perfect that there is lots more action all happening at once. So that's why the 2 motions have sort of been merged. But if anyone does have the time and the inclination to read that report, it's really comprehensive. I think they've done a really good job, and they should be congratulated on really highlighting a lot of issues that are happening for people on the ground.
It's very thorough, very thorough.
Through you, Mr Mayor, if I can speak to the motion now.
Councillor Jones?
Absolutely gut-wrenching reports. That's what you're going to see once you read inside this parliamentary inquiry. And many of our community will have experienced to some degree the problem with our health system at the moment. Like Councillor Poppin has just described, even with the best of staff, unless it's unless they've got the right quota of people up there at our local hospital, how can they possibly do the job? For example, we had one nurse on a shift in the evening, covering a hospital that is at the crossroads of the Hume Highway and the Barton Highway, and servicing a community of 18,000. Not good enough, and we all see it, we've all experienced it ourselves. And it's not just about the acute services at a hospital, it's also the flow on. Having to go either to Queanbeyan or Goulburn or over to the ACT for things that should be delivered here in our community. And I know that it's a bit like the Hunger Games, every community is up against the same fight, trying to pull locums from all kinds of places. We've had locums come from Western Australia to actually man our hospital, and the state government has to respond to that. I know community members put into this inquiry. For example, the new Yass Hospital with Maternity Working Group put a submission in. And I just want to support Councillor Pothin's steps. I know the Mayor and myself and some other councillors met with the Southern Local Health District's executive team, and they were amazed that we were looking 50 years ahead, that we were actually advocating for them to choose a site in Yass Valley for your next new hospital, because we are aware of how our community is going to grow. And they commended our team for being so proactive, for advocating for them, for our community. But these are the facts. We're going to grow. By 2036, 27,000 people on the ground here. By 2056, 47,000 people. If we don't start planning our next steps, because it takes about 10 years to plan for, get the clinical services review done, secure the political commitment, secure the budget commitment, it takes 10 years. I've seen other communities do it. We need to get that done. There was an election, a state election, and we had a petition going for a new Yass hospital with maternity. And Cara looked around and said, what a great idea, we'll do a petition too. You know how much money they got? 80 million to actually pull off a refurbishment of their hospital. They're still complaining, but they got 80 million. We got $7 million for our refurb of our entryway and our upgrade of our emergency, but that's all that can be done up there. From now, we need to be looking into our future of not just the population now, but where we're headed, because the growth from the ACT will not stop its impact on us. And we've got big developments happening in Yass and more to come if we're going to meet our settlement strategy. And we need to really put the pedal to the metal on advocacy, and I applaud all that our Mayor is doing and these next steps. Well done.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. I'll just ask
Mr Mayor, if I could recommend that there is actually no need to amend this recommendation because the notice of motion is actually much broader. I would suggest to council that you keep both rather than trying to bring them both together. Okay. All right.
Okay, any further discussion? We'll go back to the original recommendation on 6.7. So that's been moved, Councillor Pothin, Councillor Jones. I'll put that motion. All those in favour? Those against? Declare it carried. Perhaps while we're dealing with it, we'll jump straight forward to the notice of motion. So that's been moved by Councillor Pothin, seconded Councillor Jones. Any discussion? Okay, I'll put that motion. All those in favour? Those against? Declare it carried. Thank you, councillors. We'll go back now to 6.8, the General Manager's delegations. I think that's just a formality. There's a recommendation.
Through Mr Mayor, so moved.
Councillor Jones. Seconder, Councillor Pothin, thank you. Any discussion? I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? Declare it carried. The organisational structure, again. Councillor Reid, Councillor Burgess. Any discussion? Councillor Cameron.
Through you, Mr Mayor, I'd like to put a foreshadowed motion, thank you. And the foreshadowed motion is that this item be deferred to later in the year.
We have a seconder.
I don't believe you need a seconder for a
Foreshadowed motion.
No.
Oh, okay. It's
If
just
this,
a
if this
motion.
motion fails, then we've got to.
So we'll do
Oh,
this
yes,
first
of course,
and then-
yes.
Right.
So we speak to this one first and then we go.
Okay, look, this is not an urgent, the structural, motion is,
We need speakers for the first motion. If you're speaking to your foreshadow.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, we'll do
Sorry,
apologies. The original motion first. Okay. Councillor Jones.
Through Mr Mayor, I thought this would be a chicken flick, but if not, I will speak. I just wanted to say that over the last 10 years, I have looked at the structure of other councils because I'm ever wanting to sharpen my own pencil and to decide whether or not we should have a two-tier directorship. I have since come to the conclusion, after the innumerable times they've had to pick up the phone at all hours of the day and answer my questions on their complex portfolios, that this is a council, however we think of ourselves as being a small rural council, we are a complex council. The kind of issues just in the planning and environment portfolio alone, I think would kind of wager the heaviness of a state government portfolio to some degree in terms of the cross-border issues that our directors have to engage with, high growth issues such as how we're going to bring water from Canberra or Burrinjuck. These are big complex issues. We're a community that has very little public transport involved, and that has social implications, which I'm sure that our Director of Corporate and Community Services is getting her head around in terms of youth, our most vulnerable, just in this this federal election, having to put it out there that we might need to fight for our Centrelink and our Medicare Centre, tells you how vulnerable our community is if those kinds of services go. And all of this takes a very skilled team. And one of the things that has been around us is the push to go back to a public service style wage without the opportunity for contracts for our directors. We would not have this team up here if we couldn't pay a better dollar than the rural country council rates that other councils would be using to attract the younger, less experienced. Sorry guys, should have seen you. Anyway, so what I'm trying to tell you is don't change it. It's not broke. Please stick with it.
If you add another director, we are already going into a deficit. It won't be absorbed, it will be on top of. We currently, our employee benefits are currently 44% of the total income revenue. So you need to think about that. And I'm sorry, what was the first question you asked me was?
I think that was it. Will it affect you right now, in other words?
No. Look, it is requirement that the structure be brought back within 12 months of the election for council to reconfirm. And at the current time, we are all on contracts. So it's not a matter of just redesigning the structure, it would be negotiating contracts as well.
All right, yeah, thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, any further discussion?
Through you, Mr Mayor. Just in closing,
Closing the debate,
Yes.
Councillor Jones.
I'd just like to say that always open to ideas. And I think what we've heard about these initial questions is that that there is scope, but it should come from our general manager in terms of putting forward a plan for us to review. That's what we're charging with, organising the organisation for us. By all means, have that conversation. The community strategic plan is not just our plan, so it is the community's. So while I agree a lot of things will come out of that community strategic process, not all of it will be directly impacted on how we run our organisation. It might impact on who we advocate and who we lobby to get other forms of funding. To say that something shouldn't happen because we don't have the money in the budget, I think the kind of plan that you're looking at might be forward steps. So it may not actually happen in our time on council. But if there was the opportunity to fund something, we also need to consider what impact it has on all the other contracts, because bringing another director in would probably mean they would have to have something quite commensurate with what our other directors are on. And there's quite the skill set in front of us right now. So not opposed to hearing more, but I would like to see it come through as a direct result of the review from our general manager of our organisation for us to consider.
Okay, I'll put the motion.
Which motion are we putting?
We're putting the original motion. You'll foreshadow your motion. If this one goes down.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? Declare the motion carried. Foreshadow motion lapses, of course. Okay, 7.3. Notice of motion, monster.
7-1.
7-1.
On about you.
Just making sure.
Instead of foreshadowing your glasses.
That's enough of that, councillor Abbey. Councillor Jones.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I have a notice of motion up on the screen now that the curb and guttering contribution from residents in Mount Street, Yass, in 2016 be determined as a category of cases eligible for a refund of curb and guttering fees in recognition of the road rehabilitation and curb and guttering related to the road dilapidation associated with the dam wall construction. Actually, I think that's the original one.
It is.
That's the original. Back that up. Where's the actual? Is it up there? No, hold on. 1 second. Bear with me. Okay. Thank you for your patience, councillors. This step that comes before that one. So I have a motion that says the curb and guttering contribution from residents in Mount Street, Yass, in 2016 be determined to be a category of cases eligible for a refund of curb and guttering fees in recognition of the road rehab and curb and guttering related to the road dilapidation associated with the dam wall construction. The proposed refund of curb and guttering charges in Mount Street be placed on public exhibition for 28 days in accordance with that section of the Act, and that following exhibition, any submissions be considered prior to making any determination for a refund of any curb and guttering fees. And I'm just going to send that to...
It's the same one. That's the same one, councillor.
Yeah.
That's the category piece. Is that...
Yep.
That's what's up there?
That's what's up
Oh,
there.
that's the new one. Okay, sorry. I got confused. I thought I was reading the old one. Sorry. Bear with me.
Okay, do you have a seconder?
Okay. If I can speak to seek a seconder, if I don't have one.
No, I think we need to have a seconder first before we start this. I think we need to go through the due process.
So your second,
I'll second it.
purposes of discussion.
For the purposes of discussion, because I think there's matters that need to be discussed.
Sometimes you are allowed to speak for 5 minutes to gain a seconder. But that's okay. I'm allowed.
Not while I'm in charge.
There's a new coach in town. All right. Look, thank you for your patience with this. It's not often that a new council is faced with something that is from so long ago. However, with a new batch of fresh faces, I think things in the past that just the community may have felt weren't dealt with fairly have risen to the top, and this is certainly one of them. We had a representation from a community member come forward and spoke with the mayor and myself, and it certainly felt to me that this is worth another look. The reason why I'm bringing this forward is due to the fact that the residents in this particular street, they did not have curb and guttering before. They were told that their road would be rehabilitated following their road being the main construction pathway for trucks, cranes, you name it, to get into the dam, to upgrade the dam. And so as a result of that, the synergies were, let's also put curb and guttering in it. Now we have a policy which says that should be paid for by 50% by the residents which are on that street. And that would normally be covered under our policy, that we would ask for that refund, that contribution of 50%. I'm told that residents at that time were in a meeting and they were promised that that would be part of the road construction. Now there's no way to confirm that other than, you know, the representations that we've had from community members. What concerns me about this particular situation is that a federal government grant was sought and was successful for this project. And I'll just read you out what's available on the Australian Government Department of Infrastructure and Regional Development site at the time. And that was that a Roads to Recovery program was applied for funding. The road was, that was accepted. We received $80,000 as a council towards that project. The project description is: road is subject to localised flooding and failures due to the road drainage not being formalised, upgrade of non-trafficable road lanes and installation of curb and guttering. So this council used that funding to upgrade the road, but we sought the full 50% contribution of the curb and guttering from our residents. So we took the grant and used it, but we didn't pass on any of the benefits of that grant to our residents. So in the interest of fair play, I'd like to bring it back and have us look at what other category of cases might that trigger. Let's look at the whole playing field, not just this one particular instance. And that's what this step is doing. You're not agreeing to a refund tonight, you're agreeing to see what else is out there that this category of cases might bring forward.
Councillor Reid.
Yeah, I'd like to speak to this because it raises quite a number of issues. And I'd like to thank Councillor Jules for bringing it forward, even though I don't think it should be brought forward to this council. And I don't think it should be brought forward for a number of reasons. The first one is that we're debating this matter yet again, and yet it's been before council at least once, and I believe possibly twice. This council has adjudicated on that and decided that the money should not be rebated in any way, and that these people should pay for what they've received. Are we as councillors going to continue to do this until, if we don't agree with a particular point of view, or are we going to just keep coming back to council again and again and again? I don't think that's the case. I don't think we should be thinking along those lines, unless there is a change of circumstances or some information that's been presented to us by a letter, a document of some sort, the minutes of the meeting, whatever, that we can say, yes, there is proof that that assurance was given. I've got one here. Yeah, it was a properly constituted council, and we should be supporting that as councillors, even though we may disagree with the decision that was made. If a decision is made by this council, we should all be going out and supporting those decisions. What really gets me is we're being told a person stood up at a meeting and said something and gave a commitment. Who was that person? Was it the then mayor? Was it the then general manager? Was it the tea lady or the tea man or the developer? We don't know. We're just told that that assurance was given. what authority did that person have at the time? Does anybody in this council have the authority to go to a public meeting and make a decision and say, yes, we're going to present this, we're going to cover the costs of the curb and guttering in this particular case, and not know where that money is going to come from, because it's going to come from somewhere else. Now, again, Councillor Jones has said that there is an issue here where there's some money being granted to council, but what was that actually granted for that specific purpose to cover the curb and guttering? And why? Why do we get a grant for that particular street and no other street? I can well understand why a commitment would be given to put the road back to at least a reasonable level, given all the traffic that we were expecting on there. My biggest concern is what are we doing by going forward and saying we may be able to give rebates to people on curb and guttering or anything else that we might define in that context. Because there's a whole lot of traffic going up and down Wallaroo Road, Nanima Road, Macintosh Circuit. We're giving you some kind of commitment for that. But what about the new development out at Yass? Are we going to cover the curb and guttering there? Some of the curb and guttering. So I'm really concerned that and this is our own policy, by the way. Our policy said this is what we should be doing, and yet we're stepping back and saying, no, in this particular case, I think there's something different. I don't know what's different. They didn't have curb and guttering beforehand. There was an assurance, and I'm sure I would back in, that there was an assurance given, or should have been given, that the road would have been put back as it should have been. So I have all these concerns, and I think that if we go ahead with this particular motion, then we could be opening up, well, we're setting an expectation with these people that we will look at perhaps giving a refund. And should we be doing that if in the end result we don't? And should this council be ratifying a decision made by somebody in a public meeting when we don't even know if that person had any authority to do what they did? I don't think we should. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Reid, Councillor Abbey.
Yes, I'd like to you, Mayor, speak against the motion. I think that a couple of points, I'll be mercifully brief. One, it sets and creates a really dangerous precedent. And secondly, that it really opens up a can of worms. And I really think that as a new council, so to speak, we shouldn't be looking at matters that may or may not have been handled poorly and all these hearsay things by a previous councillor and GM, and that it should be given no further consideration.
Thank you, Councillor Abbey. Councillor Burgess.
So I'm against the motion too. I think it's, as Councillor Abbey said and Councillor Reid said, it's going to open a big can of worms up, be everybody after some money that's something the council did before. And it was a decision of the council in 2016, I believe, that the motion was put through, or was through council, that they had to pay 50%.
Through you, Mr Mayor, I'd also like to speak against this motion. I feel like this motion is quite inappropriate. It feels very specific to a few residents, and I think it is particularly being based on a verbal conversation and something that's gone back so many years. It seems really hard. We don't have sort of firm-based evidence or anything to go back on this. The other thing I wanted to point out is, like, one of the points was there was reduced trucks and things, and that is tough when you've got building going on in your street and there is a lot of activity and a lot of heavy machinery in those streets, and I know how tough that is as a resident to be waking up to that and all that sort of stuff. However, to me, those trucks and cranes have also driven all on the other streets to get there. So it's not like they were only on that street. There's a lot of surrounding streets. So to me, like, the can of worms is, where does that stop? The other point I wanted to make is coming back to the word contribution. And what a contribution is it gives into a bucket, which also goes through to a lot of community, you know, the roads for everybody and all of that. And it is a contribution. It's not a direct fee that pays for a direct thing. You don't go out and measure that person's curb and gutter, right, you have this much, so you pay this much. That's what a contribution is. It all goes into the same bucket. So for me, that word is quite key, that it is a fee that is paid on a community thing for the betterment of the whole community, of the street. And I know, I went for a drive up there and the street looks great. They've all got curb and guttering. It looks, you know, it's fantastic. They've got a great view across the dam. It's a beautiful place to be. And I know there's been a few years of works to get to that point. However, I think they've got, you know, a great street that looks fantastic now, so, yeah.
Thank you, councillor Puth. Any further discussion? Well, I'll just make an observation, since I was present when the gentleman made the representations to Councillor Jones and myself, that he feels that it is history, but he wanted to make the point that he felt that he had been badly done by. And from what he related to me, I can only say that I felt that he was a very truthful man and that he was seriously badly done by. He was put in a situation where he was personally humiliated, and he had to spend money to pay for the curb and guttering that he borrowed for another purpose, and that created a problem for him as far as his banking arrangements are concerned. But it seems that the general consensus here is that council, we've had the opportunity of airing the matter, which I think was only right.
I'm not speaking for or against the motion, I'm just picking up on what you said, Mayor. It does appear that some wrong may have been done somewhere along the line, where there was obviously a miscommunication of some sort. Is it possible then for council to talk to this person and perhaps give them some form of official apology? But I mean, it's a bit difficult to say we're apologising for something that we didn't really know happened, or at least couch it in some way that would at least show that we have our processes and procedures and we need to stick to them. And it is difficult for all of us. I think everybody here would feel for that person, that ratepayer. But we're here as representatives of all the ratepayers. So.
Okay, I think we've had enough discussion, so I'll put the motion. Or do you want to exercise your right? No?
I do have a backup motion, so I'll just let the chips land where they land.
Okay.
I'll foreshadowing a
Foreshadowing
second
a motion.
Would you like to hear it?
Thank you,
okay.
councillor Jones.
Okay. I'd like to foreshadow that council writes to Mr. Oliver and provide pathways if he would like to take his complaints further, such as writing to the Ombudsman or writing to local government association. And step 2, that a report be brought back to council on any on any precedents of reduction of contributions or costs to customers of council due to grants or contributions from other sources. And this will allow us to see, do we have any precedents sitting in our own backyard where we have done this? And the reason why I'm suggesting that we do this is that it's good governance to know if we've done it before. And secondly, because in this particular instance, a very significant contribution of $80,000 was made by the federal government. And I think if we have this kind of information, if we have already reduced other costs to customers based on grants that we may have received, then going forward we'll understand what we should be doing. Because in this instance, the council used all of that federal grant contribution to cover its part of the cost. Yet it charged what it's supposed to do under its policy in full to our customers. So this will give us some clue going forward as to how we should proceed.
Councillor Jones, I've just taken some advice and it seems that the mover of a motion can't foreshadow.
I was thinking that,
Okay.
Gotta give it a try, gotta give it a try.
I'll never let a chance go.
That's not a bad one. Okay. We're ready to vote now then on the motion. Okay, all those in favour? Awesome.
Sorry, now I know what I'm doing.
Those against? Okay, where are we up to?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, do I have an opportunity to put the motion now that I was not supposed to push
The
out?
motion's deleted, defeated.
Yeah,
Motion's defeated.
sorry.
This is a significantly different motion, and it provides a pathway to communicate.
You can
You can't.
you can move a notice of motion for the next meeting. Yep.
So, yeah, notice of motion for next week, next month,
Okay,
sorry.
yes. Okay. Questions without notice, Neil? So we've got to go back to the committees. Someone like to move that we move into
Minutes.
Hang on.
Coming.
Session's got minutes.
I thought I only had one page to do. Who else? 9.1, minutes.
Yeah, we already did 7.2 earlier.
Yes.
So 9.1, minutes of the Traffic Management Committee held on the 4th of May, 2022.
Do I move? Yeah, I'll move the, no, I don't want to move the rest of the motion. Because I want this bloody stop sign of banning.
Okay, someone like to move?
Just ridiculous putting it there for a start.
Councillor Cameron, Councillor
Hang on, we just gotta move this second.
Cameron. Councillor.
More important roads around that should have stop signs on. This stop sign should be on Bowning Road where the give way sign is, and a line across the road where people can see it. There's no line across there, not on Red Hill Road. Because that's where the road comes down around. Maybe all the people come flying down around there. And this way you can see it all and you give way. There's plenty of room. Otherwise, there's bloody tree over here all along the bridges. You can't see. So it should be on Bowning Road. And I was talking to people last Tuesday night, and that's where they want it. More on Red Hill Road.
How many people were you talking to?
Yeah. 10 or 15?
Is that a representative cross-section?
I'd say so. Not the community.
I'm not sure of the process or the procedure at this point, but I'd like to endorse what Cecil just said. I've been to that intersection, I've looked at it, and if you're driving along it, the natural progression is just simply you feel like you're on a certain road, and this takes off at basically a right angle, almost a right angle, and people just don't appreciate that that's the main road. And I've actually put forward a recommendation to have that intersection looked at and changed, and I don't think a stop sign would be appropriate. A stop sign on Red Hill Road would be appropriate, but not the other way around. I think people should have a really good look at it.
Councillor Cameron.
Yeah, look, I defer to Councillor Burgess's local knowledge and experience with Bowning and many other areas, and his hard work in filling potholes and making sure things get done. This came out of, I went to 2 meetings of the Bowning Progress Association. Now, are they representative of the locals? No. I'm sure that's the answer, but I have to take into account that they are the people who meet and discuss issues. And it was brought up on a couple of occasions that this was a problem. And so therefore we took it to the traffic committee. And I'm quite certain that they were basically arguing for a stop sign on Red Hill Road.
Yeah, I don't disagree.
Yeah, they wanted a stop sign on Red Hill Road because Red Hill Road hits into a T intersection with Bowning Road.
Yep.
And so they wanted it to be made very clear that the Bowning Road traffic didn't have to give way to Red Hill Road. They made the point, and they could be wrong, but I was listening to them, and they made the point that basically there was confusion there and they wanted to sort it out, and that's what they thought was reasonable. When I took it to the local traffic committee, the argument was not about where the stop sign went, it was definitely saying that because it was a T intersection, the stop sign should be on Red Hill Road.
Okay, well, the way forward seems to be that we adopt the report and recommendations with the deletion of the recommendation on Red Hill Road, and that be referred back to the traffic committee.
As it reads, it doesn't say where the stop sign should be. It simply says that the committee give in principal support to install a stop sign and any required marking at the intersection of those two places. So it just needs clarification.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm quite prepared to take it back to the August meeting to get clarification.
Happy with that? Everyone happy?
Sorry, through you, the mover was, I think, councillor Potham. Are you happy to amend that recommendation to remove that?
Okay, everyone happy? I'll put the motion, all those in favour? Those against? Very carried. Minutes of the Local Rescue and Local Emergency Management Committee held on the 12th of May. I'd like to move. Councillor Abbey. Councillor Reid, seconded. Any discussion? I'll put the motion, all those in favour? Declare it carried. Someone like to move the...
I'll move again.
Thank you, councillor Burgess. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Potham? Okay, we move into confidential. Thank you, visitors. See you.